panel from communications here at Coastal Carolina University today. I'm going to start going this way. So this first individual here is the wonderful Dr. Kyle Holliday, professor in the Department of Communication, Media, and Culture. And his teaching and research interests include news coverage of complicated health issues, as well as the effects of media content on audiences. Next to Dr. Holliday is Dr. Christina Selby, who's a professor of the Department of Communication, Media, and Culture, and the chair. Her primary area of teaching and research is health communication, which is inspired by both personal and societal health events. And then finally, not finally, but there, Dr. Andrea Bergstrom, associate professor in the Department of Communication, Media, and Culture, and her primary area of teaching and research concerns children and families' interpersonal communication and media use and effects. And with that, please join me in welcoming them for this incredible panel discussion on the power of empathy in AI communication.
All right, so I am going to introduce us and get us started. As was previously mentioned, I'm Dr. Selby. I'm so excited that all of you are here today to learn about AI and empathy. We've been getting a lot of messages about the importance of AI, the role of AI, whether we should use it or not use it. And so what we set out to do was reach out to some of our alumni. So alumni in our department, we had interviews with them, which we recorded. And many of those alumni work in industry. And then we have one alum who is in a PhD program. And we asked them about their previous experiences, what their major was when they were at Coastal. So these are CCU alums. And then what their current positions are, as well as how they're using AI with their current positions. And I think this is really useful information for all of you, because you're being told sometimes you should be using it and sometimes that you shouldn't be using it. I want to take a step back too and talk about a couple of things. So we know what AI is. You have some professors that prohibit it. You have other professors that are allowing it. And so we're sort of navigating that AI experience. We do recognize that at some point in your careers, you're going to be tasked with utilizing AI, different AI tools. That being said, as your instructors and as your professors, one thing that we know is that we have to train you first to think on your own, and to demonstrate empathy. And so if you were in the last panel, there was a discussion about empathy, and that discussion carries over into this panel as well, or this presentation. What exactly is empathy? Well, a lot of you in here are probably in our department, our communication majors. Empathy is the greatest level of understanding. At a very basic, fundamental level, we can hear, and that is a biological thing. You have the ability to hear. And once we get beyond that, we may be able to listen. And if you're listening, you're somebody who can say, I have heard you, and I'm trying to make sense of what you've said according to my own perspectives and experiences. But when we get to a level of empathy, I've heard you, I think about what it means to me, and I'm trying to stand in your shoes. What we worry about with AI is that we lose that ability to empathize. We want to make sure that you're fully capable of empathizing first. Then we take the tools which produce content that comes across as very formulaic, a little robotic. But how can we do that in a way where we don't lose us? You are each individuals, and that's what's going to make you really good as a student and really strong in your professions. And so let's go ahead and move forward. A lot of what you're going to see here today is recorded. These are recordings that we've done with our alums to see what they're doing and how they're using AI with their current position. So thank you again for being here, and let's go on.
Okay, so as Dr. Selby said, our presentation includes a lot of recorded conversations that we had with our alumni. So the first couple of moments of this are them introducing themselves. We'll also have time for you all to ask questions, not of these people because they're not live here, but if you do have any questions for them, we have their contact information, and they've all said that they're willing to hear from you all.
My name is Danira Brown, Danira Dyneira, Brown as in the color. And then my major was communications with a focus in broadcast, broadcast journalism, but it was on the same track as like interactive journalism. And so my minor was marketing, and I graduated in 2023.
I'm Brooke Gottlieb. I was a communication studies major at Coastal, and I minored in public health, and I graduated in May of 2023.
I am Bessie Bosco, previously Bessie Wilson. I graduated in 2018. I was a part of the Honors College, and my major was communication with a focus in the public relation track. And then I triple minored in Spanish journalism and marketing.
My name is Zach Silverberg. I was a communication major. My minor, I think technically was in theater. The beginning of the 2015 year, we had a winter graduation.
I am currently the 5 p.m. newscast producer for Live 5 News in Charleston. So a little thing about my job is basically everything that you see on a local news channel, or even, like on CBS News, all that stuff is operated by what we do in the background. So basically, I have to put together shows, and with that entails like putting stories together that actually like is newsworthy, or what I think would be like beneficial to our viewers, and also like writing the stories and making it conversational so that you can understand, and because like if I don't understand it, you can't understand it. So just like taking all of the news that's throughout the nation, throughout our region, and then also like mainly local news, and then portraying that out to the public. But we also like besides writing and besides like putting together the show, we also control like how you see said story. And so that like involves our showcasing, which means that I have to tell our cameras where to point for like our anchors at, or like where they stand in the newsroom, or like how they're going to say certain things, or if you see like a picture behind them or a video playing, that's all me like telling them what to do and like how to show said thing, or so that you can be able to get a better glimpse of the story. And also, when reporters are out in the field, I'm the person in their ear telling them when to start talking and when to stop talking. So like they have a thing in their ear called IFB. And so I'm in a control room with my director, which he's the one that's like pushing the buttons to make things go. But I'm the one that's like in control saying like, you need to take this now, or like, you need to go here, you need to go there. So it's a lot of like micromanaging, but like you kind of put together the entire show and make it happen behind the scenes, like through our like EMPS system, and also with like coordinating with your director so that you can be able to see all the stuff on TV.
Currently, I'm in my first year as a PhD student at the UNC Hussman School for Journalism and Media in Chapel Hill. And so I'm a grad student, but also work as a research assistant in the Communicating for Health and Impact Lab with Dr. Seth Noor. And I also serve as a TA as well.
I am currently an account manager at a digital marketing agency in East Longmeadow, Massachusetts. I just started October 1st, so I'm still kind of new, but so far I've been kind of getting accounts, understanding accounts, like in doing all the intro things while working with, I want to say there's a bunch of accounts that we all work with. But yeah, so I'm doing more of the PR in an agency setting. When I first graduated from Coastal, I accepted a job at My Horry News, which is the local news media print outlet down in Horry County. And I'd worked there for about 7 years, almost 8 years actually, as the digital person. And I kind of ended as a digital marketing manager there. So I oversaw the whole digital realm of the company, of like print like digital advertising, some of the websites, and working with clients on all of their digital advertising too.
My title at Status Pro is producer, but it's a startup company, so there's a lot of different hats to wear in a startup. So could be recording the trailer for the game, or producing a training app, or doing a media product. It's just servicing and fighting for clarity, keeping communication with engineers and design and anybody else within the company, so information flows well and the products end up at quality. I work with some foundations, so Lamar Jackson's Forever Dreamers and Yo Baltimore. We do Thanksgiving like turkey giveaway every year, and then on the 20th of this month we're doing a toy giveaway at this Power of Faith church here in Baltimore. So if you're familiar with Preakness, the horse race, it's a church right across from that. So definitely a lot of people turn out. It's always good events when we team up with the community.
Okay, so just to kind of give some context to the 4 people that you just heard from, those are all students who graduated from the communication program, which is a very interdisciplinary program, not nearly as interdisciplinary as an interdisciplinary major. But basically, all 4 of them didn't quite know what they were going to do when they graduated, and over their education, over going to classes, and especially doing extracurricular things here at Coastal, they figured out, oh, I'm good at this. This is what I want to do. If any of you were in the previous presentation, you heard somebody ask, should we pursue happiness or money? And all of them have pursued happiness, and that's come along with money. So all 4 of them are doing things that they find very meaningful, that wasn't necessarily the plan of what they were seeking when they got to Coastal, but they became, very competent and very understanding of what they could do and what they wanted to do. Zach, the last one, is a really great example. His job didn't exist. His company didn't exist until he helped start it. And that inspiration came not only from his understanding of communication or humanities more generally, but also he just had the confidence to say, hey, should we do this? Or go up to business athletes and say, can you help us with this project we're working on? And he knew how to work with their representatives to try to get them as well. Before we move on to the next question, I also wanted to share that in every session of Humanities Week, you can find this booklet that has information about all of the different majors that are in Edwards College, including the undergraduate and graduate programs. But on every page, there's also information about potential jobs. So if you are in our college and you're not quite sure what to do with that degree after you graduate, there are some great ideas in here. Including actual examples of real students, not just ideas, but rather true examples of people whose path you could follow. Go to the next question. Okay. So the next question we asked was about if the people that these alumni work for, if those organizations or corporations had a certain perspective on AI. We have a few other questions related to AI as well, obviously.
We have actually a system dedicated, because I work under this company named Gray. And so they, like all of our training people or everybody up in corporate, they actually made a AI system that's specifically for Gray and specifically works with like all the news stations under Gray. So it is trained like how we're trained to kind of like pick out the things that would be newsworthy or pick out the things that would like help us. And they actually made little assistants for each part of our company. So there's like a sales assistant, then there's like a reporter assistant, and then there's like a producer assistant, which I use. And what I like about it, or what they like about it, is that it like helps us save time when it comes to like writing stuff or like just putting things together, but also gives us more time to focus on, like I said, the showcasing, and give us more time to like make the viewer care about said story, and instead of like focusing on trying to just write it all up and just like in stuff like that. Because you have to make sure like a lot of stories are accurate, but also you have to also focus on like the things that are like making the story relevant to said viewer. So it does free up a lot of time, but they are really encouraging us to use the AI system. But I mean, I feel like it's good because like there's some features on it where it's like it kind of helps me save time. So there's one feature that I really like where there's like meeting agendas and stuff that we have to kind of like go through. And sometimes it's like 40 pages. I don't have time to read 40 pages. So like I would plug that entire meeting agenda into like our gray eye system. And within like maybe like 10 seconds, it would just like summarize it. It would just like tell you like the key points and stuff like that. Obviously, it's not like writing out what you should like take from that, but I'm like using that as like a time saver so that I can still be able to write my own content. But it also helps me so that I don't have to like spend all my day just reading all of that. So it does help me in that way. So I feel like they use that to not like have us copy and paste said thing from like AI, but to just help us save time.
So this is actually really interesting. I don't know if you've seen this in the news at all, but UNC is creating like a separate school to be in the next like year or two where it's dedicated to AI. So I think like since it became popular, it is becoming more accepted. But basically as like TAs, we are supposed to discuss with the professor and come up with like different standards for each class. So the way that each class is doing it now could be different depending on like what's agreed upon. So it does like I feel like there's not a set policy that everybody is using right now. It's kind of differs by class. I don't know if that will change once the AI school becomes a thing, but that's how it is now.
My current employer is very pro AI, and his mindset is kind of like we need to enhance it. Like it's not going anywhere, so let's utilize it. Let's see how it can help us. Let's not avoid it or not be afraid of it. Let's learn it so we can incorporate it with helping our clients. So that's kind of his mindset, and it's been great to like learn kind of like the ins and outs. There's still so much to learn, obviously, but it's been really cool to learn it in this position because at my previous job we didn't really use it much at all. And I think that goes towards, that's a print company that kind of goes towards journalism and ethics and using AI for that. So I'm not super surprised that we, at least when I was there, didn't use AI. At least to my knowledge, I didn't use it at all when I was there. I don't know if anyone else did. But I think with a media company, and in the future, we're going to see it too, just like the ethics behind utilizing AI, which I'm sure you guys see it too with people trying to do papers with AI and stuff like that. And like ChatGPT and Gemini and all that. But no, my current employer, he's very, let's see how it can help us. Let's learn it. Let's not be afraid of it. Obviously, it's not perfect and we still need humans, but let's see like how it can help us work smarter, not harder.
We actually make AI products. So this recently we just launched a game for the new Samsung virtual reality headset, and it was a NFL Pro Era, but we integrated Gemini into it in this feature called Coach G. So he's just like a virtual coaching assistant that hops in and he's like, "Hey, it's second and long. You should probably put the ball in the air. Don't run it, or things of that nature." So when that with that being said, we're very positive on AI, but we're also very much non-reliant on AI to close out projects. It's a good thing for sourcing information and gathering, information, but you can't rely on it to get you to the finish line. For example, like when you're delivering assets or even papers, I'd imagine you have the final copy of the final, then my favorite final version, and you can only get to that level of clarity and like nuance polish if the person that's in charge of the main stakeholder in the project is the one that's doing the major lift of the work. So I think it's two sides of the same coin. Like we'd like to see it grow and help it grow and be a part of that, but it's also not at a point where like, hey, we're not going to rely on it to do our work yet.
So as you can see, each of these students does use AI as a tool in their current job, and they do a wide variety of work across the field of communication. And even though they're doing these pretty different jobs in different subsets of the field, right, the common thread is that AI can be a helpful tool, right? Their employers are seeing that.
But they also know that they can't rely on AI to create the level of work that they need to hand into their clients or their employers, right, whoever their bosses are, right? So using it as a tool to help assist, to help save time, right, to synthesize some information seems to be, right, kind of a more commonly accepted use of AI in the workplace. Right, but at this point, right, none of these people mentioned that it's acceptable to have AI do a task for them, right? So they're using it as an assistant, right? And I think this is a really important kind of note about the purpose of AI, right? What are we looking to accomplish with AI? What are we, right? What are our goals? What tasks might we need some assistance with? But, what is AI good for? Right, and so we can kind of conceptualize this, right, as a way that applies to our current classes as well. Right, AI is not the tool, right, to complete your work for you, but it can help you get to the place to help you brainstorm and synthesize and work through problems and save some time. So across these 4 vastly different jobs, different industries, I thought this was a really important common thread for us to note about what employees, what our alums are actually doing with AI itself, right, as well as what they're not doing.
And one last thing I wanted to point out was with the last interview, I thought it was really important what he talked about. Yes, it helped you with maybe a first draft, but how much editing and personalization did he have to put into it to get to a place where he would be willing to share that with his client? He had to get that empathy back in there. Okay, so he may have used it at one point, and that's also something I hope resonates with you all as students. When we see students use AI incorrectly, they'll ask AI to perform the task, as Dr. Bergstrom said, and then they leave it at that. And then there's no you. Okay, so maybe it can help you with a piece, but most of it should be you. Because when we read your work, we can tell if it's you or if it's machine. And so make sure that you're not lost in the process.
The first question was, do their employers have a perspective? The next question asked, do their employers have policies? Which is basically asking, not only does your employer think it's a good idea, but also have they put up guardrails, or have they encourage you with specific software, in the way that the first person, Tanira, said that Gray Media has actually created AI chats for what her job is. So this next question is basically clarifying what are the rules that these organizations have set up.
If you do use it, you're supposed to disclose where and how you used it. But like the biggest thing I think that I've been told is, you don't want it to like take away your authentic voice. I think like as a writer and a researcher, that's really important. So, having it help you with like the minimal things, but not doing too much of your work.
Obviously, we can't copy paste, that's plagiarism. So like if we do work for a client and use, I don't know, ChatGPT to help with a blog, we need to read it. We need to change some things. We can't keep word for word because that is plagiarism. And also a lot of times with AI, what we've been noticing is if you have it, like if you put in a prompt and have it like write something for you, it doesn't sound human. Like it does not sound real. So like, even if you try to do a little trick, like humanize this or make this more human, like it doesn't really. So like definitely reading, like you can use it for like points and talking points and stuff like that, but definitely do your own work, but it's there to help.
Okay, the next question is two-part. One, how did they think in using AI in their own organization, how has it improved their ability to do their job? And then also, in what ways has AI potentially made their job harder to complete?
I don't see any way that it makes it harder, but well, I guess if you use it correctly, it shouldn't make your job harder. But like they always tell us to, if you use AI, to make sure that you're like going back and checking it, because sometimes like, it may come up with some stuff, but it also like would take some stuff that has not been inside of like the paper, or like stuff that's not even relative to like what's going on. So it's always good to like double check it before you do any, like before you post anything. So if you're doing that, I don't feel like it should be anything bad, but I always found it as like just good. So like I said about the meeting agendas, that was really good. And then it also has this feature where it helps people write teases. I personally don't do that because I like having things coming out of my brain, but a lot of people like to just take, like, what you can do is like take a story and then like it says help me write a tease, like the thing that comes before like the story comes, like, oh, like coming up next this is this, and like trying to grab like a attention grabbing sentence. And sometimes people would take it as is, or they can be able to take it and then like tweak it a little bit to make it sound better. But yeah, I think it's a really good tool to really like save time, but I also think that it shouldn't be a crutch, or it shouldn't be something that you should rely on, because at the end of the day, with news, it's not just about like the words you put on there, it's about like how things are said and how things are like portrayed. So you can't really teach AI to like showcase, and you also can't like teach it to like know your anchor styles, because like some of my anchors, like, I mean, it's the holiday season and one of my anchors like refuses to say Santa, and so it's like, it's like those little tiny little things that that really play into like really like how you do your job and like how you portray said thing for the viewers. So you have to really have that sense of communication, or like that sense of like connectivity with like your job and like how you're doing things. But also you can use AI to like just help you like get to that point, or like help you like get there faster, so that you can be able to create those moments and be able to do more with your newscast. So I feel like that's like, I don't know. I feel like that's like the whole basis of what I feel about AI. I really welcome it, because honestly, it's here. You might as well use it. And it's not like, I mean, if you don't change like with the times, it's gonna like catch up to you. So you might as well like embrace it, but not to the point where it's like taking over your job, if that makes sense. Like, not to the point where you're using it to like copy paste things. So I just feel like it should probably be like a last resort if you're like trying to like figure out, if you're trying to figure out something like something to write or something like that. It should be used more like a guide, instead of being used more like a cheat or like a crutch or something like that, because not every job is going to have like AI or have the same policies like how my job does. Because like at my last station, we didn't even have these features. Like AI wasn't even a thing, and it was just like you should not be using AI. So it's like I can rely on it now, or not rely on it, but like I can use it now, but I can't say the same thing for like my next job. So I feel like you shouldn't rely heavily on it. It should be something that's a tool, or something that's like a resource or a guide, like I said, but it's not something that should be like an end all be all. I should be using it every single day type things, because you want to still have that critical thinking, and you still want to have that ability and skill to like actually do your job, just in case, what if like like AI comes down, or like something happens to it, so you can't really rely on it anymore. So I think you should always have those skill sets ready, or like on deck, and be able to use those first. And then if you do need to use AI, you just like hop on for like a little quick tool, or like a quick thing that'll help you out.
I honestly think it emerged as an undergrad, which I think that was actually an advantage for me because there was no chat GPT when I was an undergrad. And now when I'm seeing, because I also work, like I've worked in like the athlete support services office, like tutoring athletes, and a lot of them are like everyone's just using it to be their voice. And so I felt like I had the advantage where I kind of found my voice before AI. So that puts me at advantage because I know how to use it to not like take away from that. So that's where I think it can be a disadvantage for current undergrads where it's like so popular now. There's not like a commonality between all these different ways that professors are using AI or allowing it to be used. It really is up to the professor in most of the classes. Some are more lenient than others. The brainstorming stage where you have an idea or research idea specifically, and not knowing exactly where to go with it, that can be a good tool to like start a conversation and like generating ideas. It's funny because I still do it on paper, but I feel like now it's more like through AI first, and then I write it on paper. And then another thing, especially for I found it helpful with like teaching and making engaging, like coming up with ideas for engaging activities for students has also been where I found it helpful. And then one more thing, I'm very schedule oriented, so sometimes I'll type like all of the stuff I have to do, and then it will create like a good schedule for what I should prioritize. So that's also been helpful.
Be comfortable, like encourage in the sense of like if it's going to help you, generate ideas or help edit things. Like we've had we work with any type of industry, any type of business, but we had a valve, I think it was a valve company, and we were making a brochure for them. And so we uploaded that brochure into whatever Gemini, ChatGPT, whatever we were using. And it had found industry grammatical errors where like certain terminology, like it's like a 2-word thing, they'll use the first word first, and we had them flip-flopped because we're not in the industry, we don't know it. ChatGPT or Gemini, whatever it was, caught on to that. And similarly, like we've one of our clients is in the medical field. I don't know medical terms, so I put whatever the creative I was working on, I uploaded it to that and was like, please make sure like medical terminology is correct. And I did my own research, but it also caught like this should be hyphenated, this should be, with medical things like that. So in the sense of that, it definitely helps. At least I'm working on marketing campaigns and concepts and sometimes designs for different clients that I work with. And so sometimes if I like am working on a blog post, I'll write in some like the main topic, and I'll write in my ideas for like paragraph like subtopics, and I'll give me some more ideas, and they'll provide, I say they, Chat or Gemini, whoever will provide different they'll like brainstorm different ideas that I could use. I've also seen some people, it can build a website. So like normally in like one of our web designers, it takes like 12, any like bottom line 12 hours to completely build a website. He tried to build a website, and it took the AI, again, I don't remember if it was Chat or Gemini or who it was, but it took them 20 minutes to build. It was a bad website. It had to have edits, but it had like the groundwork of like it was built, but we needed to definitely add stuff to it. So it does make it easier in that sense, but also in some senses, it's kind of like how I was saying, like you can tell when things are AI generated. So like the authenticity, and I've been focusing on like this for my clients of like they have a voice and they have a feel to their brand and an authenticity to their brand, and AI doesn't know what that is. Like it needs the human touch, it needs the human wordage. So like it's good to get like a baseline if you're stumped or if you need an idea, but you need to put your own into it.
Sourcing information, it's always a lot of my job is dealing with creative issues and copywriting and whatnot. So if I need 25 ways to say a certain phrase or an idea to communicate that, it's great to just source that detail and at least just help me get to the answer I want, or kind of point me in the right direction. Same thing for large data sets. So we sit in these calls for 45 minutes, an hour with a large team. You have this whole script, or you have the whole closed captions of the meeting. You feed that through an LLM, and it's able to break down and find, summarize and get the information out of that. So those are great tools, and it saves time. It helps scaling. If you have a small design team or a small engineering team, you can assign smaller tasks to the LLM or like any type of AI bot to do those for you. But like I said before, it's not what we rely on the final 50%. It's more of like a thought starter than it is like an actual closer or deliverer of like any actual asset. I think there's a lot more fluff and things to fight through. AI is notorious for hallucinating and not really telling you what you need to hear, but giving you some confirmation bias and telling you what you want to hear, keep you engaged, all that. So for me, where it's, we wear a bunch of different hats and you're getting so much information and documents constantly that you have to fight through, the extra AI fluff now, anybody can put together a 1,500 word report or this full deck or whatnot. The influx of all this fluff, these filler anime episodes, that inundate you, it makes it hard to fight through the clarity and actually get to the core contents that you're trying to like work with. So I would say it makes things a little bit more messy. I think when they first came out, like two years ago or so, 2 3 years ago, they got popular. You explore with it and you mess around with it, and a lot of the like functions of like being creative, like give me a story of the 1970s Steelers, but make it Cinderella. You know what I mean? And it was like cool to do all these creative things, but like you realize that just like a calculator, playing with a calculator and putting big large numbers together. At some point, you're just getting all this information that you have nothing to do. It was really cool and novel to start off with, but you kind of realize a lot of these tasks, if I want them done well, I have to be the one to do them.
Something that the last speaker is going to mention a little bit more in a second about, but is a really good point of the advantages and disadvantages of using an LLM is that each time you ask an LLM to do something, it restarts thinking. So if you're continuing a conversation or chat that you've had with it, it remembers what you said. But when we are having a conversation, if we're having a brainstorming session, and we come up with a really cool idea, like, oh, we should do this. And then we say, well, have any other companies done this before? One of us might remember, or we might be able to use an LLM, or we might be able to use just a search engine to find, have any other companies used this before? But when you ask that of the LLM, it is restarting the process as if it has not been part of that conversation. It rethinks every single time. It doesn't really have memory besides within your chat. So if you were to come back to it later, it's coming up with the same, it's coming up with a brand new way of thinking about it in a way that might not match the plan that everybody had been working on. Another thing to worry about is that if you ask it for an idea or creative idea from LLMs, probably other people in the same industry, and that's something that Zach mentioned, he works for a video game company that he helped start. Other companies are also trying to come up with what's going to be successful within this realm. And so if they're using LLMs, they're going to seek out what's been most popular or what's been the common trend recently. And it might suggest the same idea. So 4 or 5 different people who were supposed to come up with their own ideas in a meeting could come in and all have essentially the same idea because they use the same tool to find it. Same thing if applying for jobs. If you are applying for a job and say, I think it's a really good idea if you all do this, and you present something that somebody else also presented on the job market or that company has already done, and you didn't know that because you're just using using the chatbot to tell you what the best or most common answer is, that's going to not be that impressive. They're going to think you didn't do the research. They're going to think that the LLM did the research. I'm sorry, LLM is hard for me to say. Anyways, anything else?
So we were thinking about kind of how AI makes our jobs. What does it do as a tool to make our jobs easier, and also kind of what does it do? How might it make our work or our jobs more challenging? Are there ways as students that you have found that AI is making your work, your job as a student, more challenging?
We're actually asking you. This isn't rhetorical.
Fine. And we can talk more about this too at the end during discussion. But to get us thinking, right, like in what ways is this a tool that you found to be legitimately helpful? Or in what ways has this presented some challenges or roadblocks that you wouldn't have encountered if you were not using AI? Do we want to think about that for a minute as we watch, and we'll come back to that as our discussion point?
And then the last set of questions that we asked them was what advice they would give to college students in general, but we were actually asking for them what advice would they give you all, people who are coming to this Humanities Week presentation. They were all either recent graduates or had recently started a new job. So a lot of the advice is related to how to apply this to a career, but it's good advice generally too.
Not to just rely on it as much. Like, I think, like I said, like using it more as a guide and not like the end all be all just because you can't understand something. Try to use your paths of like other paths and other ways to like get to said point, because you with certain college professors or like activities and whatnot, they might want it a certain way, and then if you get it from like chat gpt or like AI or any type of AI, it probably won't match up to their standards. So I would just focus more on, like I said, having those skills of just like writing your papers or like doing any assignment, but also following like that standard that you already have in your class. Cause like certain people like it certain ways. And I would just talk more with your professor and talk more with like the people that's around you so that you can get a better understanding of like what's going on. Because I mean, although AI is like super easy to use, it's not the most reliable. So I would just always like, because you would always have to double check it anyway. So I would just tell them to at least use it as a guide and as a tool and a resource, but not to solely use that, but to always like check back with your teacher, check back with other people that could help you, because we have like a whole bunch of resources already on campus that would help you. So I would try all those other avenues, and then like AI would probably be like the last resort, because you don't want to even end up like using it and then it ends up like being something completely wrong on your paper, or like they catch you using it. So I would rather just like focus on your skills and hone down on those skills, because those will help you later in life, than to just always rely on ChatGPT or AI. And you can get caught like doing all this stuff. Like there's always some type of consequence. So I just feel like save yourself the trouble and just, write it yourself. And then like, if you want to like, hey, how can I make this like more concise, or, look at some ideas and then be like, okay, let me take that into consideration, but also let me just like write it in the way that I need to be writing it.
I think now that we have this out there, it's like, you can get into a brain rot and you're like, okay, let me just think this through. So knowing that's there, I feel like not just for me, but for a lot of people, and maybe it hinders the creativity a little bit sometimes. That's what I would say, yeah. And then also, we're not really sure how accurate the information is that it's giving you. And then like I've also looked at some research on just like the bias within AI and all that. So that's a whole other issue too. So like where do we draw the line of like, creating new, because I feel like you're right that it's gathering from like what's already out there, the database or whatever. It's pretty inevitable that college students will be using it. So I wouldn't say like don't use it at all, but I would say approach it with caution. Like I already said earlier, like making sure the stuff that you're putting out is like as much of you as you can make it, because I think that's what makes research and writing in general like unique, is everybody has their own styles. So making sure that, it's mostly, starting with your ideas, and then you can use it as a tool to help, but not like overtake what you're doing. That's been a big issue that I've seen, as first as a tutor, but also as like a TA. There are instances where, people are basically creating their whole paper out of AI, and so that is a big issue. A lot of the sources that AI will give you are like AI generated like news articles that are not even real. So becomes a whole other issue too. That I've also seen is like fake citations.
Don't be afraid to learn it, but do not rely on it. Like your brain is what retains your lessons that you learn and your information that you're getting from your professors. Like you're going to remember something that any of you guys taught versus just looking it up like when you can on AI. I wouldn't say like, and you retain it for your life. Like, I still remember my thesis topic that I worked on with you, Dr. Bergstrom, where if I wrote AI like, hey, write me this prompt, get me some points I can make, like I wouldn't retain that, because I did the research when I was writing my project, where if you use AI for everything, it's a one and done, you're just getting it and you're done with it. Where, I think students, you're paying for an education, so be educated. Don't rely on something that you have for the rest of your life to look up and Google and whatever. I was working on a press release recently, and so I had written it out. Someone at my work looked at it and they were like, oh, did chat help you with this? And I was like, no. Like I remember sitting in Professor Muckenstrom's class, learning how now Dr. Muckenstrom's class, learning how to write a press release. Like I'm like I remember how to do it. Like what? But obviously, like I did put it through chat to make sure like all the grammar was correct and everything, just because it was for medical. So I want all that to be right. But I was like, no, like I remember the lesson, like I'm retaining that. And I think that a lot of students, like if they only like depend on, any AI, I think it's great. It's going to help us, whatever, but don't make it the only thing that you're depending on. Like you've got a brain, like let's use it, let's remember things. And it's that human connection too, because sitting in class, like learning and absorbing from your professor, like how many times did I come to visit all of you in class and after hours?
I think AI is a great tool if you're ambitious and you're a small team and you want to do a lot of things by yourself. If you want to be a designer and a producer and an engineer and all the other jobs at one time, I think that's great. But if you're actually focused on quality and you want to focus on the things that are going to separate you from other people in your field, it's really about your ability to immerse yourself in your work and then deliver it the way that you see it being fit. Um, and if there's any type of task that you're able to automate or get done with an LLM or any type of AI chatbot, it's probably a task that wasn't as important that it seemed before, and going forward, I would see that losing its value. So I wouldn't rely on being able to do those tasks that were easy. Focus on the process and actually learning how you deliver at quality. That's what's going to get you where you want to go. I work directly with a lot of engineers, and essentially talking with a chatbot or an LLM is like working with an engineer without the context or the skill of the engineer. What I mean by that is, hey, or an editor, same type of thing if you're working on a video. It's I can tell step by step by step this editor and this engineer. And by the eighth or ninth round of iteration, they get my workflow, where I'm coming from, my intent. They have a track record of how we got to the place we've gotten. When you're working with LLMs, it's very segmented and fragmented, where it's like if you can get it in this prompt right now, this is your best shot. But then it doesn't do a good job of building on that. It kind of just re-rolls the dice again. It's like, hey, is this a better roll of the dice? Do you like this a little bit more? And if you're not careful, you're going to miss all those changes on the back end that, were so important, but they're like tiny little details. And by the time you get to the end of iterating with these chatbots, you're like, I don't even see the step one or the core foundation of my original work anymore. Either it's shifted and turned it into something that I didn't intend to, and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to settle for this, or it's completely broken, and you're like, I can't, I got to start over because we've strayed so far from the original prompt. You know what I mean? And it's like a lot of wasted time on the back end trying to make this work. Where it's like, hey, if you just sat down and read what the person said, or watched the video, or you just did the work itself, you would not only learn a little bit about it and improve your process, but like you probably would have answered and did the actual product a little bit better. So the people that are actually really doing the work, I think it's going to benefit them now versus the people that are trying to shortcut, because now everyone has so much access to really high-end shortcuts that, like you said, you're seeing the same ideas, although they're Nobel, prize winning ideas, but a third of the class is having them. This thing is programmed to give you what you want because it wants you to engage with you. It's making its best guess of what you're doing for XYZ. You know what I mean? And the more I understood that, where I was like, okay, maybe instead of being like a partner in this, maybe you're like a very low level assistant where I can't really rely on you. Like you're going to actually write my final drafts, but like maybe you'll catch like one little nuanced thing that might be able to plus up my final work. See all these viral videos of people that work in tech that are making these videos and showing you like how, there's some coder that's sitting on a call like this and they're doing a job interview, and it's taking in the question from the interviewee, and it's automatically coding and doing the stuff. That's not the reality of how these LLMs work on the space level that people are using. So I think it's a little bit of expectations where people are like, oh, this thing does this stuff that I see on TikTok all the time. That's not really what you're working with. You know what I mean? You would actually have to be educated and know how to prompt it to do that. Where what you're working with is actually something that's trying to keep you engaged with it, and it's giving you like a low level output that all of your other classmates are doing as well.
Great. I had two quick things before we continue. One is I'm about to say something. I did use AI to help with this video, not for the actual people. Those are real people. But you may have noticed that there were a fair number of mistakes in the closed captioning for that. And that's because AI was guessing at what they meant rather than, as a human being, I understood what they were trying to say. So it didn't capitalize the letter the word I a lot. It didn't include punctuation because basically AI is trained to hear the words and show those to you rather than understand the context in which they're used. The other is that these are real people, and they perform these interviews out of the goodness of their hearts and on their own time. So they would really love to see the audience for this. So if you all don't mind, I'll take a picture to share with them. And if you don't want to be in the picture, you can, like John Cena, and just put your face or your hand in front of your face. But I'm going to take a picture. If you want to like give thumbs up or something, that would be really nice for them. Okay. Okay, thank you all.
And I wanted to follow up on that as well and talk about the alums that we interviewed. How do you think we selected these students? Why did we select this group of students? Well, these are students that we know. You know, these are students that we stayed in contact with. And how did we come to have that relationship? A lot of the time they had a question in a class. They came and talked to us after class. They came to our office hours. They did a little bit extra. When they were struggling with an assignment, they asked questions. You know, and back then they didn't have the opportunity to resort to the tool. They had to ask the questions. And in the process, a relationship was formed. Those students that form relationships with their professors have a lot of advantages. You know, once you have that relationship, those are the students that are successful when they ask for letters of recommendation, when they need connections, when they're going out, you know, in need of a job, that there might be somebody who knows somebody. That relationship, that human piece, once again resonating true there. And so I really wanted to point that out. We have a lot of students that we stay in touch with, but you do have to be a little extra. So resorting to technology is oftentimes doing, you know, it could be the easy way out, but instead doing a little more, asking questions, doing that work yourself, establishing that relationship, and then take advantage of the tool when it's a part of your job, but waiting until that point. So I just wanted to mention that.
So back to my question from before. In what ways has AI made your tasks as a student more difficult rather than easier?
You happen to not want to answer that about yourself. Maybe you know somebody very closely.
Yeah, not so much you personally, but the student role. And I do know a handful of people in here. I could randomly call a few names out, but would love to have any insights from volunteers. Out back, please.
Your work can be questioned of whether you did it or not.
You mean in terms of that, was this like an AI generated task?
Yeah, especially like English classes. I've had papers that I've written myself that I've had to like talk to professors about.
Right, and the fact that you have written that yourself equips you to have that conversation, right? That you were able to talk and discuss that. Because usually that's the first sign, right? Is that you don't know how to explain what you've written, right? So that's lucky for you, has allowed you to have more in-depth conversations with your faculty right there.
I know that didn't feel good to have that conversation, but you weren't able to have that conversation for exactly the same reasons that all of the presenters or the alumni shared, is that they started off by knowing what the final product should look like, even if they didn't know the details of it. So they knew this looks good or this looks bad when they were presented with an outcome from the LLM. Because they had that understanding, they had that education, and they had that imagination even before they started using this tool.
I think you need to share the fun fact that was not shared in the video.
Okay,
Oh, did you have that?
I have it as deleted scene at the end.
Deleted.
I am included in it. I just couldn't edit that part out. But this is a little fact about Zach, who we interviewed.
Zach is actually the person who had the idea for us to have teal turf on our football field. Now our track also has teal on it, and that all came from Zach's mind. So I'm leaving a record at the university.
Coach Mobley at the time was the head coach, and he was always out there first as well. And I knew that was an opportunity that if I ever had an idea or something that I wanted some, much like Dr. Holliday, more wisdom on it, I'll go to Coach Mobley because that was the one-on-one time I had. So I was out there first every day. I heard murmurs of us getting turf. And I brought it up one day at practice, and he's like, "Yeah, we're talking about this, Zach. Yeah, it's a complicated thing, blah blah blah. We're doing all this." And I was like, "Hey, if we're gonna get turf, we're all about teal. Teal's almost green. Might as well get some teal turf." He's like, "Zach, that's worth a discussion." And he was like, "Hey, we have a meeting with the person about the color, and now we actually have a meeting with a distributor that's going to bring us some material samples of the color." And I'm like, "Great." And the next thing I heard, he was like, "Hey, it's getting approved," and it was getting installed. And then Dr. Holliday was mailing me pieces of teal turf, I think from the original
That's
install.
amazing.
Dr. Holliday sent it to me, and yeah, it just kind of came together. And I had a very small part in actually making it happen. It was just more of me trying to impress Coach Moglia, I think, with cool ideas, and this one actually stuck. So here we are.
So that is also an example of Zach had this idea and used the tools that were available to him. Now, he's now using AI a lot in his current job, which is at this company that he helped start. They're not only integrating AI into the products that they're creating, he's also using it to help solidify those ideas, making sure they're catching all of the right decisions. The tool he had while he was here was what Dr. Selby said before, which was networking, which was empathy, understanding what Coach Moglia, who actually still works at Coastal, he's not the head coach of the football team anymore, but he still works here. And I probably shouldn't say this, but that's actually a really good impression of Coach Moglia. So if you ever hear that voice, that was pretty accurate. But
He practiced that for sure.
yeah, he also did it in front of Coach Moglia a lot. So one of the tools he had was he had built up those relationships, and he felt confident and safe enough to go and say, "Hey, I have this idea, and now probably we're going to have Tilt Turf forever." And it genuinely was really Zach's idea. He was on the football team at the time, and that's how he had access to the coach. And he shared that idea and helped follow through with it, and the school followed through with it. And so we have this lasting legacy. It doesn't make enough money, at least not yet, in order to name the field, and it's already been named. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. Anyway, so fun fact about our presenters.
So in the end, our goal was to give you some perspective, maybe why your professors say the things that they say about AI, why they have different policies and rules in place. But also what we really want to get across to you is that you are all, unique individuals with different experiences and perspectives and backgrounds. And we want the classroom to be a place where we can utilize all that and bring all of those ideas together, because it is so much more powerful and more impactful than something that is generated with AI a lot of the time. So we can use it to help us, but don't rely on it, because you all have really great ideas and we want to see those in the classroom. So with that being said, are there any questions? We can take those.
Yeah, let's do a little bit of questions. Before we do that, I'm just curious because you brought it up, just a wonderful balance of the contextualization of all of this, but we've been using these words even when we stumble, and I stumble over them all the time too. Do we know what when we say LLM? Anybody know what that means?
Real language model.
Large language, yes, that's right. So the important thing to take from that, and I just want to make this point, is that most of what we're doing in ChatGPT or Cloud or Gemini or any of them are all based on the language models. They're scrubbing language. They're scrubbing our language. You heard bias come up for a minute in there. They're scrubbing our text, our language. And then they're using predictive modeling that happens at a very high rate of speed to produce these iterations that Dr. Holliday talks about. Hallucination. What is a hallucination?
In this context.
In this context. Yeah, we could go a lot of different directions with that, but in this context, what's a hallucination, you know?
Like picking up words, aren't they?
And it works. It actually gets really creative with, and it was mentioned once, creating references. So let's say you decide you want to try to write a paper. I'm sorry, no, I didn't think they had hallucinations. I'm sorry, I'm stand out to drop everything. Hallucinations in AI, as you just pointed out, are the tendency for these, through these iterations, when it goes, it'll say, let's say you ask it to write a paper for you, a research paper, and you need references. It'll create the references, and they look like real references. They look like real bibliographic materials. But if you actually go to them, they don't exist. It's completely manufactured, it's completely made out.
One of the key ways we often
If you're actually looking for it, it's the first thing you look for, and you're like, oh, this was AI. I've seen before. There's other things to look for too as well. And so the importance of that, it's not just a game of gotcha, but it also points right to the idea that this is manufactured, non-factual, not real information. And if you miss that, the consequence is some really interesting. I teach a lot of this stuff too, and in this context, there's been some really terrible instances where people in the legal profession, for example, decided they were going to do it. They ended up with a source that wasn't, and they, get sued. I mean, there's real consequences behind this. So I want to, may I pop a question to all of you, and maybe some of you can what, in this context, because I think you played it out beautifully here. What is the empathic connection here? Like how, in my view, this is changing what we understand to be empathic in some ways. Could you talk a little bit about the shift in what we're talking about in terms of, and even a very practical, contextualized sense of the empathic moment in this?
There are a couple of different ways that could be considered. In terms of what the speakers or our alumni were talking about, the empathy that we're referring to is understanding the audience, including understanding the employers that you're hoping to work for, or if you have clients, what is their ultimate goal, or how should you best communicate them? And so empathy can be a tool in that regard of not just using it for, only for capitalistic or whatever reasons, only for money making, but just understanding we have a goal, a shared goal, and empathy helps us understand that, in communication and good writing helps us understand that. Another thing, recently, I have 3 brothers and a sister. We're all on a chat with each other, as well as with my nieces and nephews. And recently, my younger brother asked who's using AI at work or who's using it in their personal lives. And my niece, who doesn't have a reason to use it in her job, said that she uses it every single day. And one of the reasons she uses it is she feels empathy. She feels a connection with the way that it communicates back with her. So she's searching for information. She's searching for, how do I change a tire, or how do I find someone who can change my tire? How do I make this recipe? That the chatbot will talk back to her in a way that she understands and feels a connection with, rather than finding the information. The problem, and that's something that one of the speakers said, is that she's using that to get the information rather than to learn the information. And so part of it is the empathy with yourself of realizing I'm using this exclusively as a tool, including the information it's giving me as a tool, rather than I'm learning from it. And it's not going to stick. If you're not applying it yourself, then it's not going to stay. And so when you go and apply for a job and they say, oh, what did you learn from this class? Or what's a project that you worked on? you can say, well, I used AI and it was very effective. I got an A, or, this actually won an award. But if they ask you to repeat it, you can get AI to repeat it. You don't necessarily know how to recreate it yourself or create something new yourself. That's not to say you don't have the ability to do that, but you're using a tool that is sort of taking away that use of your imagination. And I think empathy comes into that in an important way of using empathy to understand and imagine what will be effective at communicating to the audience or communicating to the potential employer.
And to add a kind of point and also a question to that, right? The real life connection, right, between getting empathy from another person that you have a relationship with, that you have reciprocity with, right? The idea of empathy in a genuine, human, authentic way is lost as people are gaining that from chat bots, right, that are programmed to interact with you rather than in an authentic human emotion and sense of connection, right? So even though you may feel kind of some sense of empathy, but you're also losing the type of communication, the type of interactions, the types of relationships, right, that you would have with an actual human being to engage in some of those things, right? So I think the empathy can be gained in some ways, but also kind of lost in some other really authentic, important ways, right? That research on happiness and well-being supports, right, about genuine human connections and relationships.
And unfortunately, AI can fake it pretty well, but if we don't like the response, we can tell it to give us a different response. In a way, we can't do that with real life people.
Or if you need a genuine sense of support or connection in real time, right, who's going to help you do this thing, right? Your computer's not going to do that. But
If Paula Blank, it would seem almost ironic or contradictory, claims that once we get through the problems, and there will be many associated with AI, we're focusing on one particular aspect of this, that we will, if we survive and continue on with this, that we'll be entering what a new culture of care. It seems, why would we be entering a culture of care when we have this thing now that we're all afraid with the extreme heights taking our jobs and taking us out of the equation? And he pointed to the quantum. We're at the LLM level, but there's a thing called the quantum level where it's going to be able to do a lot more than it's doing right now, including right now in the health industry. Those of you interested in health sciences and communications, that AI does unbelievable work with diagnostics and has been shown to be more accurate than human diagnoses. But it can't have the conversation with the patient afterwards and all the nuances about that diagnosis, and that you will need all of those communication skills to be able to mediate that.
And
Dr. Why? Yes, sorry.
I just want to follow up and say, a lot of you in here are some sort of communication department major, and there's a reason why you get into this major. That you do, it's satisfying to have these conversations and these interactions. And when I talk to a lot of my students, they do say things like, I want to work with people. That is something that is rewarding, and we want our jobs to be rewarding. And so even as a professor, when I engage with my students and I read assignments, I want to learn about you, the authentic you. And I can tell when it's authentic and when it's something very generic. Okay? So kind of keep that in the back of your mind as well. And I know Dr. Pillai had a question.
Well, I think both Dr. Boyle and Dr. Selby just addressed the question I was thinking of is, why is authenticity and empathy important? Like, how is it connect? We understand, yes, these are good qualities to have and you want to be authentic and important emotions to express with your friends, with your family, but is it important in what they call the real world, right? Is it important to have empathy and authenticity of connection to do well as an intern or as a store manager?
About job and professions are absolutely saying yes, that's the case, right? No matter what technology skills, employers are continually coming back and saying, but these people aren't writing on their own, or these people can't speak in public, they can't connect, we can't have these conversations, right? Where there's something being missed in terms of actual interpersonal communication skills, right? Right, it's really important that we continue to use and develop because it's holding people back when they go to interact with real jobs.
It is a broader thing too, right? A question, if any of you would like to jump in, it's like it's a pick one. If you had to go back to, let's say, your K through 12 experience as a younger person, what's like one thing that stood out to you that made a difference to you in your experience, let's say in 7th grade?
That's a happy time.
Yes, wonderful time of life, right? Let's say you're a really difficult time in 7th grade. You're an athlete, you're a student, you're doing something. Name one situation that made a difference for you, that maybe gave you a positive spin on something or changed your perspective on something. Just a quick description of it. Anybody? Yes.
So I remember this really well. It was a poli-sci, it was called Political Science and Political Studies class. And I wrote, it was like a free writing exercise, and I wrote something which like came out of nowhere. I literally cannot remember how I came up with something, and I did. And my teacher, I still remember her name. She called me aside and said, "You should be a writer, you know." And it was like so heart moving, and I teach
Look
writing.
at you. You're
Yeah, I know.
And you said something, I've been doing some research on this. You said something that I hear over and over again, dairy conversation. I still remember her name, you know? I still remember that person. I still remember that coach. I still remember that art teacher. I still remember that friend, because those are the things that make the turning point that lead us to this place where joy comes together with monetization. Ivy. That empathy you're never going to get from a bot. You're not going to be, man, that bot. And then that's my heart. And if you do, you end up at the New York Times section on the mental health. So really, push. All right, we're almost there. Does anybody else have any other questions or closing thoughts or anything that you want to, before I put out the goods?
Thank you to Dr. Boyle for being a great
Well, this was wonderful.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you all for being a great audience.